Now, more people are already struggling to access veterinary care. More animals are being presented late. And none of these proposals change the underlying cost drivers of modern veterinary medicine, things like staffing, equipment, medicines, emergency provision, complex case management. So transparency helps, but it does not equal affordability. Welcome to The Consult Room, the podcast where we explore the evolving world of modern pet care. I'm Dr Paul Manktelow, a UK veterinary surgeon with a deep passion for pet health and welfare. In each episode, I'll be exploring key issues, challenging perspectives, and offering expert insight and practical advice. Because ultimately, my mission is to improve the lives of pets and the people who love them. In today's episode, I wanted to give you an update on a story that's been shaping veterinary conversations for what feels like forever: the Competition and Markets Authority's investigation into the UK veterinary sector. Now, some of you will remember an earlier episode we recorded, which was called "Are Big Corporates Driving Up Vet Care Costs?" Now, where we talked about why this investigation was launched in the first place, things like rising bills, corporatisation, transparency concerns, and the wider pressure on pet guardians during the cost of living crisis. Now, the CMA has released its provisional decisions. Now, this isn't the final outcome, but it is a major moment in the process. And in this episode, I want to offer you a balanced professional perspective on what these decisions actually mean for people that have pets, for veterinary professionals, and for the future of pet healthcare in the UK. So, what exactly has the CMA said? And will any of this actually make veterinary care more affordable? So let's break it down. The CMA's headline conclusion is the veterinary market is not working as well as it should for people that have pets. They found that between 2016 and 2023, the average cost of veterinary treatment increased by around 53%, while overall inflation rose by about 32%. So the cost of vet care has risen significantly faster than the cost of most things. Now, some of that is understandable. Workforce shortages, increased wages, more advanced diagnostics, rising energy costs, and higher expectations around care. But the CMA believes these factors don't explain everything. They also found that many pet guardians struggle to understand pricing, compare services, or even know who runs their veterinary practice. Now, with the rapid growth of large corporate groups, a lot of practices that appear independent are not. And this can affect pricing and service structure. But here's the key point. The CMA hasn't said there isn't choice. It said that choice isn't effective because the information needed to make decisions just isn't clear enough. So what is the CMA proposing? Well, the CMA's provisional remedies focus heavily on transparency and fairness, and they fall into several key areas. And to make sense of them, here's a simple explanation of each. First is mandatory online price lists. This is so people can see basic fees like consultations, vaccinations, and neutering before choosing or visiting a practice. Clearer ownership information. Now, so it's obvious whether a practice is independent or part of a large veterinary group, which can influencing pricing and service structure. They've said they want to see written estimates for higher cost procedures. Now, this gives people a clear, itemized breakdown of expected costs so they can better understand, plan, or compare. They've asked for easier access to written prescriptions. Now, this allows people to request a prescription more easily so they can choose whether to buy medicines from the practice or from online pharmacies. They've proposed a cap on prescription fees, so practices can still charge for the time taken to assess, record, and issue prescriptions, but they cannot set unlimited or excessive fees for doing so. They've asked for clearer cremation and pet plant information. This is to ensure people know what's included, what is optional, and what the costs are at what can be a very vulnerable moment. They've also called to modernise the regulatory framework through the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. And this strengthens the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons' powers so it can regulate the profession more effectively and updating rules that currently date back to 1966. Now, all of these measures aim to bring more clarity into the system so people can make informed choices. But the CMA has been very clear. These proposals are not designed to reduce the underlying cost of veterinary care. They even considered price controls and rejected them because veterinary treatment is too complex and varies too much case to case. So while these proposals may make the market clearer, they will not make vet care significantly cheaper. So what do I think is missing? Now, I want to move into what hasn't been addressed, or at least not fully. Now, there are several areas where the CMA's proposals may have unintended consequences and where they don't yet match the realities of frontline veterinary practice. So the first thing is that increased administration burden can lead to increased cost. So many of these proposals create additional administrative work for practices. Now, for small independent practices who are already stretched thin, this means potentially more staff time, more systems, more compliance work, and increased operating costs always feed back into the most common charge, which from my perspective is the consultation fee. So one real risk here is that consultations will become more expensive across the UK, not less. The second thing is around prescription changes that don't actually address the actual cause of high medicine prices. Now, the CMA wants to make it easier for people to obtain written prescriptions and buy medicines online. Now, that's good for choice, but it doesn't touch the real issue, and that for me is the prescribing cascade. Now, this legally requires vets to choose a veterinary licensed medicine first, even if an identical human generic drug exists, which could be significantly cheaper and would be clinically appropriate. Now, human medicines are often a fraction of the price, but vets cannot legally choose them if a veterinary labelled version exists. Now, this is one of the biggest drivers of medicine costs in the UK, and the CMA didn't address it at all. Now, the other point here is that if people buy more medicines online, practices must recoup this lost income. Now, medicines represent a meaningful part of practice income. Now, consultation fees alone do not cover the cost of running a surgery. So if more people are encouraged to buy medicines online, practices will naturally have to recover that loss elsewhere, which could lead to higher consultation fees, higher surgical fees, higher diagnostic fees. Again, the unintended outcome could be more expensive treatment overall. Now, the other point here is that large vet groups benefit from scale, central purchasing, shared systems, and sometimes ownership of online pharmacies. Now, the CMA acknowledges this, but does not propose strong remedies to level the playing field for independence. Now, the other concern I have around this is the risk of treatment delays. Now, if people are encouraged to shop around after receiving a diagnosis and an estimate, treatment may be delayed. And for some conditions, even short delays can seriously impact animal welfare. Now, it's important to recognise that the veterinary profession is not unified in its response. Now, many people support, including myself, clearer pricing, clearer ownership labelling, stronger regulation. But there is also real concern about the administration burden that I've talked about before, the financial pressure on some of the smaller practices, and the uncertainty about how to implement these proposals. And the risk that these changes could increase rather than decrease costs. Now, some vets feel that the CMA simplifies how this clinical decision-making works and doesn't fully understand how practices might operate financially. So the profession's reaction is quite nuanced, supportive in parts, but with significant caution. So if I think about the bigger picture, and from my perspective, working in the charity sector where affordability still remains the crisis, even if all the CMA proposals are implemented exactly as suggested, the affordability crisis still remains. Now, more people are already struggling to access veterinary care. More animals are being presented late. And none of these proposals change the underlying cost drivers of modern veterinary medicine, things like staffing, equipment, medicines, emergency provision, complex case management. So transparency helps, but it does not equal affordability. So what happens next? Well, we're still in the middle of the process. The CMA's provisional decisions now go through consultation before the final ruling is published next year. And in parallel, in the most recent budget, the Chancellor confirmed that the government will launch a public consultation on modernising veterinary regulation, including updating the Veterinary Surgeons Act 1966. Now, remember that Act predates modern veterinary medicine, corporatization, online pharmacies, advanced diagnostics, and nurse-led care. So from my perspective, reform is long overdue. But regulatory reform, again, it's not affordability reform. It is one piece of a much larger puzzle. So where does all this leave us? Well, the CMA has identified real issues around transparency, complexity, and consumer understanding. Their proposals may make the system clearer and more consistent, and that's positive. But if you have a pet and you're hoping this will significantly reduce the cost of veterinary care, this isn't what these remedies are designed to do. And if you're a veterinary professional hoping that this will reduce pressure on practices, well, that's also unlikely. So these proposals may bring more openness to the system, but they don't resolve the deeper economic forces driving the affordability crisis. And as the investigation progresses and as the regulatory consultation opens, I will continue to follow this story really, really closely and will bring you updates here at the Consult Room. Thank you for listening to this episode. You'll find all the relevant links to this conversation in the show notes. If you enjoyed it, please follow us and leave a review. It really helps other people discover the podcast. For more insights on topics like this, you can connect with me on social media at Dr Paul the Vet, or check out my website, theconsultroom.co.uk.